Hello and welcome back to London Cycle Routes. Today I'll be showing you how to cycle from Brentford in West London to Acton. This ride takes about 20 minutes and you can do the whole thing on quiet streets and protected cycle lanes. By public transport, the same journey requires a change between bus and train and can take as much as twice as long, so cycling is a great way to make this trip. If you find this video useful or you just enjoy watching it, then please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, as I try to post new videos just like it every week. I'd also like to say a huge thank you to everybody who supports the channel on Patreon. If you'd like to contribute too, then you can find a link in the description below the video. Alright, let's get going. So we're starting by Brentford County Court, which is on our left there, and we're going to head down the new cycle lanes on Brentford High Street. These protected lanes opened a few months ago and they've made journeys by bike into central Brentford incredibly easy. They are an extension of Cycleway 9, a Transport for London route which runs pretty much from Kensington in the east all the way out to Brentford here. One great thing about Cycleway 9 is that it connects nicely to a bunch of feeder routes, including one we're going to take today out to central Acton. This is a really good example of a local trip within West London between different town centres that this new lane enables, rather than just a commuter route into central London, which is important but not the only sort of trip that people take. There's a cycle lane on either side of the road, but you may not be able to see the one in the other direction just here. That's because for about 400 metres the westbound cycle lane actually runs away from the road in the adjacent Waterman's Park, just behind that wall. Design wise, that's certainly a smart way to save space and get cycle lanes in both directions down an otherwise pretty narrow road. On the other hand, I know some people don't like cycling in parks, especially after dark. There is lighting in that one though, and it's 24-hour. If you want to see what that lane is like, you can check out the video I did a couple of months ago showing how to get from Fulham to Brentford, which does use the westbound lane. From this point onwards, the lanes actually combine into a two-way track, by the way, and whichever direction you're going in, you're now on this side of the road. Cycle lanes in London tend to do this a lot. I've heard people from other cities comment on it, and I guess it's to squeeze the maximum amount of road space out of the carriageway. There are plans to extend Cycleway 9 all the way out to Hounslow, by the way, and it is currently under construction in stages. The next stage with spades in the ground is to Acton Park to the west of Brentford, and that will connect really nicely to a bunch of other routes as well down to Twickenham. I'm definitely going to show off all the routes it enables on this channel as the next stage is open, so do make sure that you are subscribed so you don't miss that. Now, Cycleway 9 is protected lanes like the ones that we've been on for most of its length, but there is a section about a mile long coming up where it just runs on quieter back streets. This first section here at the western end of Wellesley Road is great because the closure with Kew Bridge Road means that there's just no through traffic on it, keeping the whole thing nice and quiet. But once you pass the Pilot Pub coming up on the right here, it's not quite as good. This isn't a busy road by any means, but I do think that an additional bus gate here would bring the whole thing up to a higher standard. We don't run into any issues here on this journey, as you can see, but while traffic levels are never heavy as such, you can get speeding, rat-running drivers using this street. It's far from ideal, and a shame that they've put all of this heavy engineering effort in to build protected lanes for miles either side of this section, and then left this gap in the middle somewhat below the quality standard of the rest of the route. I think, as you can see from the video, most adults would be fine cycling on this, but if you look on the left here, you will see a kid who feels the need to cycle on the pavement, and frankly, if this is a designated cycleway, then children should be comfortable riding on it as well, I think. So yeah, don't let that stretch put you off using this route, but for anyone watching from Hounslow or TfL, I do think that stretch does still need some improvement. Now, at the end of Heathfield Terrace here, Cycleway 9 does convert back into a two-way protected cycle track, which you can see coming up just ahead of us here. That protected lane continues pretty much all the way to Hammersmith and sort of to Kensington Olympia as well, in a slightly reduced form. But we're not going to be staying on Cycleway 9 for much longer, as we're going to break off from the protected lane and head towards Acton. In order to do that, we are going to turn down Clifton Gardens just here on our left. Annoyingly, Clifton Gardens is one way, so this route is slightly asymmetrical. If you're going to do it in the opposite direction, you'll want to come out of Fisher's Lane, which is slightly further up. I do really wish that Hounslow Council would put contraflow cycling on Fisher's Lane, as then you could just cycle two ways down there, and Fisher's Lane itself is a great cycle link. We're joining Fisher's Lane now here. The reason it's such a good cycle link is that it's actually been closed to through traffic since 2020. There's a railway bridge under the District and Piccadilly tube lines just here, which used to be a nightmare. The cars would get stuck there, you wouldn't want to cycle through it for sure. Now it's buses and bikes only, and it's a lot better off for it. And of course, it's a great feeder route into Cycleway 9 and would be an even better one if you had symmetrical two-way cycling running down the southern section of Fisher's Lane. Mostly the railway bridge there is totally clear, like it was when we went through, by the way, but do make sure before diving in the road that there isn't a bus coming, as I have had them creep up on me a little bit when I've used that before. Now, we're taking a back street cycle route up Rustal Avenue to get towards Acton. I've always been fascinated by the name Rustal and wondered what it was. Turns out it's a village in Kent. It used to be a spa village where people would come and bathe in the waters, and the waters had apparently a rusty quality to them. They were rich in oxidized iron. Fascinating. The village also features a rock called Toad Rock, so known because it apparently looks like a sitting toad, although I've seen a picture of it and that is debatable. This section of our cycle route today is a little bit on the wiggly side, and it might be tricky to remember which turns to take. If that's the case, you can look at these green and blue signs which are on poles here, and they will direct you down the right street. Alternatively, you could download the free map of the route, which will work on whatever app or device you choose to use. It's a GPX file, and you can find that linked in the description below the video. Generally, traffic levels on these streets are quite low, although there is one improvement that I definitely like to see made here. As we come to the end of Carlton Road and we want to cross into Southfield Recreation Ground, it would be really helpful to have a little bit of help crossing that road, as it can get a little bit busy, and this is of course a designated TfL cycleway, so it would make sense to do that. Something here, rather than waiting for a gap in the traffic, it would be great to have one of those parallel zebra crossings, which would help people walking as well, but also make it easier for people to cycle from that designated route into the recreation ground here, where we're using the paths. I also reckon there's kind of plenty of space here to either widen the path or have a separate cycle path. There's not often a lot of foot traffic on the paths in this park, which is open 24 hours by the way, but it would make sense, I think, to separate people walking and cycling. In the meantime though, that is a shared path, and do just make sure that you're cautious and courteous as you go down there and give plenty of space to anybody who's walking. There are two ways of getting over the street at the end of Malsale Road here. One is just to wait for a gap in the traffic and cycle up straight to the park, but I'm going to do this one, which is to use this Tuen Crossing. You're allowed to cycle up on the pavement there to use the crossing, which has a bike symbol on it, and then it puts you neatly over that road and into Acton Park. Now, unfortunately, Acton Park does close at night, so if you need to do this when it's closed, you'll want to take either Birkbeck Road or East Acton Lane, which both run parallel to the park on either side of it. It's only quite a short route, but when the park is open, I think it's a pleasant way to get through here. It's a very wide path, even though it's shared with pedestrians, and it's also just a nice place. Crucially, it also puts you out right next to Acton Central Station just here, which has its own level crossing, which seems to always be down. Anyway, we've made it all the way from Brentford to Acton, and you can see how direct that was. And yeah, thanks for watching with me. Do let me know in the comments what you think of that. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit the like button, as it does help other people find it. It boosts the video in the YouTube algorithm. And if you're enjoying the channel, just hit subscribe as well. It'll make sure that those videos appear on your YouTube homepage more often as well. If you really like what we're doing, you could join the other legends and contribute to the channel on Patreon. Thank you so much to everyone who does that already. There's a link in the description for any of you thinking of joining that. Do let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you all below the line. Goodbye.